And welcome back. I'm Jeffrey Brown, and joining me now in our studio is Donald Antrim. His new collection and first collection of short stories, right, is The Emerald Light in the Air. Welcome.
Thanks.
You've written in novels. You're
Yes.
known for a memoir.
Yes.
But the first collection,
Yes.
why? These are written over time.
They're
right?
written over a long time.
Yeah.
I'd written stories when I was younger, much younger, when I was starting to write, and they weren't working out. They were somewhat dutiful family stories, and I wasn't able to write them. I didn't really know enough to do it. And at a certain
Well,
point,
what does that mean? You didn't know enough to do it?
I didn't know enough about what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know, I was much younger, and I went away from them and very slowly began to write a novel that led to another novel, and eventually a memoir. And it was only after that, in 2005 or 6 or so, that I had an idea of actually writing a collection of stories. I'd written a few,
Yeah.
or not a collection, but I mean even just continuing
Yeah.
on. And for some years, it was what I did. It was a very slow process, and I've never really thought that I would write stories, but I am doing it, and I have done it. So,
Do they come from a different place, or from the novels? I mean.
yeah, I think so. The novels are very invented. They're driven by conceits. They're fantastic in a way. In 2001.
Fantastic, as in.
Yeah, as in the fantastic.
Yes.
You know,
You weren't
they're
writing a
books. They're
blurb
great
for
books.
yourself.
No,
but they're full of the fantastic.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah. That's the.
Yeah.
And then in 2001, I began a memoir. It was about my relationship with my mother, who lived a troubled life.
Yeah.
Never thought I would do anything like that either. Found myself doing it. It was compelling. And it was very, very hard on the system to do. But in that, I began to write other people's stories as well as what I thought my story would be, right? So I was working then in the third person, and I was also coming away from the fantastic into trying to describe what, as close as I could, right, as close as any of us can, whatever it is we call reality, psychological reality, and physical reality. And it began to be a move in that direction toward a more distanced, in a way, view in the name of a different kind of intimacy.
Yeah. These are, I mean, more grounded in kind of smaller lives in a big city, small lives in a big city, I guess. Sometimes they veer, the very first one about a theater kind of goes off in a way that I wasn't sure where it was going.
Right, a couple of them are they're older, and you know, they have that other kind of energy. And then sometime around 10 or 11 years ago, that began to shift. And I just let it go. I thought that it was so compelling to begin to write these stories that would contain more of the author in some way, would actually address my life through a fiction in a way that the novels hadn't really finally been able to do. So, yeah.
So I want to ask you about one specific one, Solace. Just to set it up a little, two people, they're a couple, they only meet in other people's apartments because they each have roommate problems. And both roommates are named Susan, right? Which is kind of a funny premise. But it's funny and sad, right? Because they're lacking something in their lives, including a place to bring home their partner.
Right. I mean, that story, that was a turning point, that particular story. I remember that I was afraid still of short stories because of their really, I think, massive difficulty for me. They take a very long time, and have to come back to them again and again, sometimes over the course of a year and a half or so.
Really?
But that story followed came during the time that I was writing this memoir, and I think it was a way to address what I was doing. Look, this is retrospective. You know, I mean, I didn't have ideas about what I thought I would do or what I thought it would mean to do it. I'm looking back, and I'm seeing that there was this movement that I wasn't really particularly in control of, and it was great.
Did it get easier I mean, the short
No.
stories?
They've got harder and
No.
harder and harder because the experiences that because my life got harder. After the memoir, I had a series of breakdowns. I've talked about it a little bit. I was in hospitals and the whole thing.
Yeah.
When it came out, or as it began to come out, it was clear that I would have to deal with that in some way. So the stories have become a way for me to, well, not a way, but you know, there are certain things that become inevitable. You write, you see what is coming back up at you, and then you take responsibility for aspects of it. And that's what I've had to try to do, and try to articulate that experience. And the stories have been a nice way to kind of contain that as well, you know. So it's been baby steps, baby steps, baby steps over about 20 years in this. And now I feel like I'm finally getting a sense of what a story is, what a story is to me in some way.
And what is it?
I don't know. It's intuitive, you know. But I'm not really sure. But
you're starting to feel you can do it.
I'm starting to feel that I can do it, you know, and that they're not only going to be lucky accidents. That there will be lucky accidents, but that I feel like I have a little more control. So the stories have been a bit of a laboratory, but it turns out that it's been a very, very challenging laboratory to work in, and a great one. So I feel great excitement about short stories, you know, and plan to continue on.
You do?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just too challenging. It's too good to do.
Do novels go on at the same time, or?
No, I've never really been able to multitask. You know, I mean, I one thing with concentrated time and open space, and then I can kind of get in.
Do I know you teach now at Columbia.
I do teach now.
Do you teach the short story as well? I'm asking because, and I had a chance to talk to one other author here about this, Ron Rash, because he has a collection too, about this, you know, a sort of moment for the short story, or a return, if you will, you know, where we're seeing a lot of collections and getting more attention than they did for a long time. Do you see that?
I see it. I think I see things. You know, I worked. I was an editorial assistant for years, for years and years ago, for a short amount of time, and was quite engaged with what was going on everywhere, you know, in the scene. You know, who was writing what, who was, you know, who did this, who did that, and I really had to step back some from that because it was somewhat contaminating after a while, right? But I do have that sense, you know, and I think there are great stories being written, you know. So I maybe it's a zeitgeist thing in some way that I would be doing it too. It may just be part of my time, you know what I mean, which we are. But they've always been there. They've always been a great challenge. I mean, I think that many of my favorite writers are short story writers, mainly, you know. Grace Paley. Flannery O'Connor, V.S. Pritchett, so on, the English, the Anglo-Irish short stories. I mean, there's great artists, great artists. So, it's a very, very powerful form, you know. You know.
And you're going to keep doing it?
I'm going to keep doing it, yeah, sure.
Good.
Good.
All right, the collection is The Emerald Light in the Air. Donald Antrim, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great.
Nice to talk to you.
You too.